Hello everybody, I'm Jackie K. Cooper and my entertainment rundown for today is a review of A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And this is the film about Mr. Rogers, the iconic character person who just reinvented children's television. He was, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was a beloved show and he was the force behind it. But the movie itself is not solely about Mr. Rogers. It's about Mr. Rogers, played by Tom Hanks, being interviewed for a story about him for Esquire magazine. The reporter is played by Matthew Rhys of The Americans. Some of you will remember him from that. And he's kind of a cynical person. His interviews with celebrities in the past have been kind of hatchet jobs. People have complained. So he's supposedly the last person you would think of to do an interview with the beloved Mr. Rogers. But that's what the movie is about. As he interviews Mr. Rogers and gets to know Mr. Rogers begins to, in effect, interview him and learn about his problems. And he has he's married, has a brand new baby, a little boy, but he has been alienated from his family. His mother had died, and he has not seen or spoken to his father in years. His father is played by Chris Cooper, an excellent job that he does in the movie. One real asset to the film is that the reporter's wife is played by Susan Kelechi Watson. And you might say, well, who is that? That doesn't ring a bell. Yes, it does. If you're a This Is Us fan, this is the actress who plays Randall's wife, Beth. And she is so good in this movie. She's good in every scene she has. There's just something that draws you to her character. And you want to know more about her. But as I said, the film is basically the evolution of the reporter as he is exposed to Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, as played by Tom Hanks. Now, people love Mr. Rogers. You can mention his name, oh, Mr. Rogers, and people, oh, he's so sweet, he was so nice. He was. And both my kids watch Mr. Rogers, and my wife loves Mr. Rogers and the concept of Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers always kind of got on my nerves. I wasn't there, basically when Mr. Rogers was on. I was at work, but, sometimes I would see him and he just annoyed me. I'm sorry. I know he was wonderful. I know he did great things. I know he was a kind human being, but just the way he presented himself, and he was, in that, almost fantasy world of where Mr. Rogers lived, and then there was the kingdom of Friday the 13th, or whatever the king's name was. I just never got into that because I never saw it through a child's eyes. My wife did. She saw it through our children's eyes, and she was brought into it. I saw it as adult to adult, watching Mr. Rogers. So I went into the movie still, kind of harboring some of that annoyance. I know that won't, ingratiate me to some people because he is so beloved. But to see, with Mr. Rogers at least, you thought, well, that's just the way he is. That's just the way he is. It's the way he talks. It's the way he acts. It's the way he relates to children. He's almost childlike in that. But then you have to see Tom Hanks doing a good impression of Mr. Rogers being Mr. Rogers. And so you have that added bit in there. And so Mr. Rogers was annoying. To me, Tom Hanks was even more annoying being Mr. Rogers. But that's the way I felt. But the movie itself, like I say, is basically the story of this reporter. And that was a true fact. The whole movie is based on, this article and the circumstances of this reporter, interviewing Mr. Rogers for an Esquire magazine story. It says it's based on true facts. But then I did a little bit of research and found out they just kind of took the basic facts and elaborated on them, kind of made family situations a lot worse, or even created family situations that weren't there. One thing is the way that the reporter relates to his child, and it's Mr. Rogers relates to children. Then you find out when the reporter did the story, he and his wife didn't even have a child at that time. So that disappointed me. But the acting is great. Tom Hanks will probably get a nomination. But strange as they say, he'd probably be nominated for Best Supporting Actor, since Matthew Rhys is basically the main character in the film, but we'll see. But it's rated PG because there is mild profanity and really mild violence. So, that's the reason it's a PG rated film. I scored it 7 out of 10. It's a good movie, and I'm sure people are going to love it. And, but what kept it from being a great, great movie to me was basically, I found out that the story was not totally true to the facts. And also, sorry about this, my annoyance at some of Mr. Rogers' behavior, it just kind of got on my nerves. So 7 out of 10 for me. But don't be annoyed with me. Reach down there, hit the subscribers button, because we want you to be a subscriber. And we've got lots of movie reviews coming up in the next few weeks, a lot of them. But for now, this has been Jackie K. Cooper's Entertainment Rundown with a review of A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.